What's up everybody, it's Seth from Fowler Customs, and today I'm counting down the top 10 worst sneakers of 2016. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't yet. But with all that being said, let's get into it. Happy holidays, everybody. Today is Christmas, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are watching this video on a new laptop, a new phone, a new tablet, a new whatever. But because today was such a special day, I figured why not take a look at some of the worst sneakers that have dropped this year. I realize that there isn't really a correlation between the worst sneakers of the year and Christmas. I guess they don't really make sense together, but whatever. So of course, as I said, this is my list for the 10 worst sneakers of 2016. This list isn't in any particular order. I will say that some shoes are worse than others. The shoes on this list were picked for different reasons. It wasn't just because they were an ugly shoe or they were a bad performer or something like that. Some of them were just fine, but for me personally, I just felt like they were kind of a fail of a shoe. But enough with that, let's start with the first sneaker, the Chef Curry 2 Lows. These sneakers are technically the Curry 2 Lows in like a triple white colorway, I guess. But they've also been called dad shoes or nurse shoes or anything like that. Any name that you can think of for just an awful shoe, they've been called. As I'm sure most of you know, when these shoes first dropped, they got flamed because everyone thought they looked like dad shoes. And to be honest, they're not a bad shoe. The Curry 2 Low is actually a great performer, but just the fact that so many big news outlets and big TV personalities, people who aren't even into sneakers, knew that these shoes were dad shoes, kind of bums you out a bit. It's not really a shoe that you're gonna walk into your local Foot Locker and grab and be like, this is dope, I love this, I'm gonna wear this on the court, I'm gonna rock this around. It's kind of more of a shoe that you kind of buy out of necessity because you need a basketball shoe and maybe it's the only one left, or you get it for a joke. I mean, like I said, I don't think it's a bad shoe. It's definitely not a bad performer. It's really honestly not a bad looking shoe, but it's just got this stigma behind it that any sneakerhead who really cares about what they're rocking on their feet is kind of gonna want to stay away from. And for that reason, they made the list. Next up, we've got our first pair of Yeezys on the list. It's the Zara 350 and 750 knockoffs. Now, the reason I put these shoes on the list is because technically they're not really fake or bootleg shoes. They're actually made by a legitimate source and a legitimate retailer. The problem is that they're a blatant knockoff of the Yeezy 350 and the Yeezy 750, and for that reason, they're on the list. And they're not even a good knockoff either. They look like trash. Next up is actually a pair of shoes that I don't hate, and I'm sure actually a lot of you guys have. It's the Roshe 2. Now, before anybody gets mad in the comments, let me just explain why I put this shoe on the list. As everyone knows, the Roshe Run or the Roshe 1 was one of the most popular shoes of the last couple years. They were priced super competitively at like 90 bucks. They're a good looking shoe, they're super minimal, everyone had them, they were a fad. And the thing was, they were genuinely a decent pair of shoes. The problem is that in between when the Roshe 1 came out and the Roshe 2 came out, Adidas stepped their game up. Not only that, but it became painfully obvious that Nike didn't know what made the Roshe 1 successful, and so with the Roshe 2, it was just kind of a more padded, weird, like update to the Roshe 1. Everything that I personally loved about the Roshe 1, the Roshe 2 just didn't have. And for those reasons, it's kind of been a flop. Also, the Flyknit version of the Roshe 2s with like the color changing threading or whatever, it's crap. Next up is actually a whole line of shoes. It's the Curry Luxe. Now, the Curry Luxe line isn't a bad line of shoes by any stretch of the imagination. They use good materials, the price is competitive, it's a decent looking shoe. The problem is that Under Armour is trying to take something that's supposed to be more of a functional tool and turn it into like a luxury item. That's like taking a wrench out of your toolbox and throwing leather and satin on it and calling it a wrench Luxe or a wrench Shea. Whatever it was that they were trying to do didn't really work out, and because of that, the shoes are sitting everywhere, and they pretty much went on sale almost immediately after they dropped. But like I said, it's really not a bad looking shoe. It's just they're trying to repackage something that shouldn't be repackaged. This next shoe is actually one that I did a review on a couple months ago, and to be honest, the potential was there, but the execution, it's the Jordan Future boot. So first off, let me just say, out of all the Jordan Future boots that have dropped, and I think there's been about 4 or 5 maybe, there's only one colorway that's even remotely okay, and that's the colorway that I did the review on. It's like the tan nubuck or tan suede colorway, but all the mesh colorways, it blows my mind that someone at Nike was like, yes, this is a great idea, let's do this. So obviously the Jordan Future was a really successful line for Nike, and they made a bunch of them and they sold a bunch of them. The problem was people at Nike just didn't realize that turning the shoe into a boot is a terrible idea. If Nike had actually based the whole line about that suede or nubuck tan military boot look that they had gone for with the first pair that dropped, it might have been okay. But for some reason, they thought a colorful mesh boot with a giant Jordan logo on it was better. I don't know, whenever I see that shoe in a store, I take it off the shelf and I just throw it in the ground and then I walk out because it shouldn't even, like, people shouldn't have to see it. If you got one for Christmas, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bash it. I guess I'm not that sorry. Staying in the same vein as the Jordan Future boot, the next shoe on the list is the Jordan Horizon. Now this is a shoe that I'm sure a lot of you guys wouldn't have put on the list, but the reason that I put it on the list was because I think it's ugly. They took the woven Jordan Future upper, which I don't love, and then they took the Jordan 13 outsole, which a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me on this, but personally I think it's just the worst out of all the retro outsoles. I think it's just ugly. It's stupid, I don't like it, but whatever. And then they threw those two things together to create something that somehow was worse than both of the two things separate. And the really frustrating part is that they did do a bunch of different materials on the upper on different versions, and somehow it got worse. So for that reason, it's on my list. There's only one reason why this next shoe is on the list, and that reason is when the athlete who's supposed to be wearing this shoe looks at their signature shoe for the first time and their face looks like this, you did something wrong. Klay Thompson is a man of many faces, but when he sees a shoe that is supposed to be his signature shoe, the shoe that has his name on it, the Anta KT1, he should be ecstatic. Not this. Also, I'm not sure if you can buy it in any major retailers in the US that I know of. I'm sure there's some boutique somewhere, and I'm sure you can buy it online. I haven't tried, so I don't know, but I've never seen one in a store in front of me. So that's another red flag. Next up is a shoe that I hate. It's the LeBron 13 Lows. I never loved the LeBron 13. I think it's an ugly shoe. It doesn't fit me right. It's too big. It's clunky. It's kind of dumb looking. And when they made a low version of it, the only thing I could think was, what the f***? This shoe somehow looks worse than the LeBron 13, and you can only really wear it as a lifestyle shoe because, as I'm sure you've seen in some LeBron 13 Low performance reviews like Nightwings, it actually could be dangerous to play in. Like, this shoe is cut so poorly and the silhouette is just such crap that you could actually injure your ankles playing in this shoe, and that's legitimate. That's not me making a joke. That's actually something that could happen if you play in this shoe for an extended period of time. It's just an awful, awful shoe. And also the only shoe on the list that has a pretty high likelihood of actually injuring you. Next up, we've got our last Yeezy on the list and our first legitimate pair of Yeezys, the Yeezy 350 Cleat. Now this shoe's a little weird, right? Like, if you're a football player and you love Yeezy and you love Kanye, this is a great shoe to grab. If you're not playing in the NFL, because it's banned in the NFL, but if you're just a high school, college, or I don't know if it's banned in college actually. It might be. If you're a high school or middle school or like some other league football player and you love Yeezy, this might be the shoe for you. But with that being said, it just seems like an afterthought of a design. They took the colorway of the 350s and threw it on this plasticky cleat. Personally, I don't know if the cleat performs well or not. I haven't tried it. I don't play football. I have no idea. But the thing that makes the Yeezy 350 such a desirable shoe, besides the fact that it's a Yeezy, is that it's really breathable, is that it's really comfortable. It's all that sort of goodness. This cleat has none of that. I'm kind of annoyed that Adidas put out something that was kind of an afterthought and that they didn't actually take the time to design something that was a really great and individual Yeezy cleat. Also, if you're a reseller and you went in on this cleat, that sucks. And finally, this is a shoe that's in the running for the absolute worst shoe of the year. It's the KD8 Elite. I take that back. It's the worst shoe of the year. I did a review of the KD8 months ago, and I was just blown away by how ridiculous it was. It's like they took the KD8, which was an okay performance shoe. I didn't think it looks great, but you know, it performed well. And they threw this compression sock on it because Kevin Durant likes compression socks, and they just kind of put it out there and were like, here you go guys, here's a piece of crap that we're gonna sell to you for 200 bucks. It's just a sad excuse for innovation in the footwear industry. I mean, the least they could have done is bundle some compression tights or compression socks with the shoes themselves rather than selling you the shoe that you had to have the compression socks on in order to be able to use it. I mean, it just looked ridiculous. And for me, the compression sock did nothing. It was like this floppy condom that was just kind of like flopping around. I mean, it's like, why even wear one at that point, you know what I mean? Not the cleanest metaphor, I might take that out. To be fair, I did buy the shoe, but it was totally just for the review, and I returned it immediately after because I just couldn't stand looking at it sitting staring at me in my apartment. So I hope as you guys are watching this, none of you guys got those shoes for Christmas. I'm sorry if you did. And that wraps up the countdown for the top 10 worst sneakers of 2016. Make sure to leave a comment in the comment section down below letting me know what your least favorite sneaker of 2016 was. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to Fowler Customs if you want to see more content just like this. And follow Fowler Customs in all other forms of social media.